Hey, and welcome to this week's live stream. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder of Photography Explained, and I'm going to be running through some of the photos that you have left in our Facebook group, the Photography Explained Photo Review Facebook Club. The Facebook group is absolutely free. If you want to jump in there, there'll be a link below this video. There'll be a link somewhere to jump in there. You drop your photos in, we give feedback as a community, and then once a week I jump on and take a look at some of the images. So we'll do a quick hello to Alan in beautiful Surrey. Quick hello to Michael from Long Island, New York. And I can't click this one because it's on Facebook. Hello to Peter from Middlesbrough. My wife is from Middlesbrough. So yeah, with that said, we will jump into it. It'll go for about an hour or so, and there's some class pictures this week. The first one we're going to take a look at is probably the cover of this video, or the thumbnail of this video. If you watch this either live or after the fact, if you watch it when it's not live. So without further ado, let's take a look. And it's this picture of this bee here. I would love to know, David. Do you say it? You don't say. I would love to know if this is in a studio, if this is has been set up, if this has had tons of production done on it. I would be really interested to know because it's absolutely class. Now, it's been focus stacked, and the focus stack has had some issues in a few places, like around here. Around the plant itself, and down here at the bottom, some ghosting from one frame to another. So I don't know if there's any movement there. I would also be interested to know if you've put like a blue card or piece of plastic behind it to get this color. And the complementary colors here between the yellow of the wasp and then the blue in the background is amazing. But obviously the coolest thing is all of these bubbles. I guess bubbles of water. It could be bubbles of anything. If you've done this in the studio, this might be if the wasp is a dead wasp on a dry weed covered in water. So fine. There we go. Covered in water droplets and fine quartz dust. Maybe that's what's giving it this effect. It's almost like slightly ethereal. It's cool. I really like it. As to some constructive criticism, because I certainly have no macro shots that are as cool as this. Some constructive criticism. The framing to me is slightly off. I would love to have seen just a slightly wider shot, or essentially a bit more room for the wasp to be looking into on the left-hand side. Use some kind of tool to get rid of this in the bottom, in the middle right-hand side of the image there. That bit of wisp of blurred plant in the background doesn't need to be there. Plant looks slightly anemic and odd, considering it's a dead wasp. I don't know if this is a dead plant, but the face of the wasp has beautiful golden yellow colors, and the body of it here as well, obviously where it's been lit. But the plant just, to me, looks slightly odd. Maybe it's a dead plant as well, so it just has lost a bit of color, in which case it is what it is. And then you get into the pernickety element of this, and this is the thing with macro images, right? You can keep going with feedback over and over and over again of there's some kind of hair here. I don't know from what body part that's from, but looks like a hair from not from someone's head. And as I look at the image a little bit closer, the back of the wing is cut off slightly there. But it's a cool image. These kind of images are ones that you sit back or you look at it on a phone screen and you're like, this is class. It's only when you get it on a bigger screen or a calibrated monitor and you can start to see the colors a little bit. There's room for interpretation, if nothing else. Or I would kind of change the colors around potentially. But the actual image itself, I mean, maybe there's just a crop of the wasp's head and you just get rid of all the distracting bits that I've mentioned as slight irritations. But really cool image. I would love to learn more about why fine quartz dust. Does that make these bubbles stick as a bubble? Do you spray that on the wasp beforehand so there's more, I don't know, almost like surface tension on these hairs? There's a bit of dust on there so the water collects in these balls. I will Google this after this live stream and find out. Anyone who does macro who's watching the live stream, feel free to drop a comment, and if you've got experience on that, I'd be interested to know. But yeah, cool photo, David. I appreciate you dropping that in the photo review Facebook group. Okay, we'll jump on to the next image. Here we have, is this the same David? No, different David. Good, because we can't. Someone who's so talented at the macro, I'd be jealous if you're also producing high quality landscape images like this. I really like this. What have you put down here? I like to work in black and white, seeing the transformation from color to moody tones. So this image in Oregon coast on a rainy, gloomy day. Personally, I like how it turned out, but what do you all think? I think you've got an opportunity here to, and I'll pull it into Photoshop and just demonstrate this. So the image is lovely as it is. You know, it's absolutely fine. If I was editing it, and obviously I've got a lower quality file here as I go about doing this. So it is what it is with the end result. Fine. Why you don't want to put a filter? So if I go to camera raw filter, I would try my best to find some kind of leading line here. So I'll do it very, very brutally, perhaps. But if I was to, so we've almost got this dark bit of path coming around. If I just drop the exposure slightly, I'd just see if there's a way to connect these up. Just create a bit more of a leading line there. So again, you do this with more care and attention. I've gone too broad. Let's go a new brush. We'll drop the exposure in a big way so we can just see it a little bit more easy. And then we can always pull this back. But I'm almost thinking, is there a kind of a leading line that could be zigzagged across the image there? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm trying to create something from nothing here. In which case, composing it in the field is the solution here. I feel like there's just a bit of a disconnect in the mid ground, and there's just a gap. What I'm looking for, or what I'm trying to unsuccessfully create, is just a way to link these two. So we come, so the viewer's eye comes in the bottom corner down here, which is all fine, and then it's drawn across this part. You almost need like another line going across here, and it jumps up over there. So almost a bit more, something like that. Hopefully that makes sense and that's visible over the live stream. And then you just get smaller and smaller with your brush. And then maybe you'd trying to get it across there. Something like that. Again, not the best example, but just something to connect these. Again, I think as we're looking at this, it's more likely than not going to have had to be done in the field. The only other thing is the inevitable kind of vignette, because the sky's just a bit bright and it kind of sucks my eye just out of the image. I just wonder if there's I kind of want it on the sky, not the foreground. Sure, maybe something like that. It's worked a little bit. So we're just trying to drag our eye from the bottom corner down here, across and across over to these two little islands. Oh, lovely image. That's the only thing I would be trying to do. Yeah, that is absolutely kind of on top of an already really lovely image, though. Cool. What do we have next? We have an image from Rufus. Constructive criticism, always welcome. I think this leans too heavily on... Okay, so the first bit of feedback is I find it really annoying. Obviously not really annoying. In the context of a photo that I'm reviewing on the internet on a kind of a Wednesday afternoon, it is irritating that these leaves are out of focus. I would have loved for you to have focus stacked these leaves. the thing is, these are quite integral to the framing of the shot. And so my eyes immediately show my eyes eventually going to hit the buoy down here that you've obviously done all the lovely leading lines leading to. But before I get there, I'm hitting these leaves in the foreground and kind of feeling a little bit of dissatisfaction that I can't see them. But if we throw it in, it's nothing we do that obviously, but nothing we can do about that without some heavy generative AI. But if we throw it into Photoshop, I think just a slight crop on the right hand side here, just to take the edge away. So we don't want to cut off these leaves, and we're kind of making it a little bit more obvious because we're hitting the rule of thirds there. So maybe it's a bit more obvious and less fancy, but that to me is slightly prettier as an image. The only other thing I'd think about now is there's lots of literal depth to the image, but there is not a lot of atmospheric haze that then increases the perceived depth of the image. So obviously a bit of fog here it would be ideal. But I just wonder if, I mean, if we go to Luminar Neo, these guys have a fog, mist, haze kind of setting, and so this could be a candidate for that. And then it gets into the realm of, do you want to just cheat your image and lie about it or not, or are you trying to take a accurate? That's not done very well. Layered fog. See, it's trying to use AI here to pick out this bit down the bottom. Fine, we can just do a mask. We'll do a linear gradient from the bottom. Do some haze. Why hasn't this mask stuck? Fine. Mask actions. Not sure why the mask isn't sticking there, but the point remains. That's what I'd be looking for. Luminar Neo, cool program though, if you're not familiar with it. Sometimes I just jump into this enhance option here. And also structure. That's two. See, these leaves now are even more obviously out of focus, which is a bit of a shame because it does a half decent job in the background there. It's just adding contrast to different parts of the image. Similarly with the enhanced side of things here. But that little bit of saturation to the colors adds a little bit to the image. And there's a nice bit of light there. I think you've gone in and edited a bit more light into the frame there. But yeah, the depth is what we're lacking. I'm sure a bit more time and energy could have gone into this image in the edit from either my end or your end to add a little bit more depth. But that's the only thing I'll be thinking about. And the leaves being in focus at the front. Because it's a shame, right? Because these leaves are literally they are literally a different color. They're a darker color to the background here. So in focus, they would have stood out, guided the viewer's eye in. Lovely image. Otherwise, I need to get out and do some photography because all the leaves in the UK will be off the trees in the next few weeks or so. And I've just not necessarily been lazy. I've had a bunch of this obviously isn't my main business. My main business is salesman.com. We do sales training for B2B salespeople and founders of companies selling complex, interesting products. So I've launched a new product over there. So Photography Explained, I'll take a back seat as to some of the, well, it's not even Photography Explained. I've been working dead out of Photography Explained as well. What's been taking a back seat is actually me going doing photography, which is always the way. Right, we have Conrad says, hello. Hello, Conrad. We have Mohammed says hello. Mustafa says hello. James doesn't say hello to me. James just says hello to Mohammed. Cheers, James, bro. And with that, we'll jump into the next image. And this is an interesting one. So here we have Rebecca as part of the text, I don't know why it's not come up here. Maybe it's because there's a series of images and so it hasn't come up. But Rebecca put some bump in here that she is setting up to take some photos of a newborn, and the teddy bear in this image is the stand-in. I have a 6-month-old baby. I've tried to do some baby portraits, and they've all been terrible. So this is not especially, well, I'm an amateur photographer as it is. I do a lot of landscape photography, but this is absolutely not my forte. But what I've found is that this is all very beautiful, but it's the lighting that makes the biggest difference. So the most success I've had with baby portraits is with a typical 3-point lighting setup. So if you've got the baby's face or the subject's face, the bear in this case, you've got a key light lighting up one side, you've got another light on the other side, just to increase the shadows, just so it's not a light and black kind of image. And then I use a third light then, probably from the top down, just to give an edge across the baby's head to separate them a little bit from the best you can from wherever you put them in. That is the lighting setup that I've found has created the most mum pleasing images. And then the other thing that I've done, and this was on the back of one of the folks in, I can't remember who it was now name wise, but someone in the group had some class pictures of one of their kids, and it was just a single light source to the side and behind of the kid. And so you just had the silhouette and just a sliver of light across the front of their face. I've got some cool shots of our baby, me holding the baby up, getting the light, setting a timer, and hoping she doesn't scream while we get the photos. And they're a bit more dynamic, dramatic, and less kind of mum to put on wall friendly. But I quite like those images. So they're the two kind of lighting setups. But yeah, for shots like this, Rebecca, I'm no expert. You've got it set up beautifully. The only problem you're going to find is this bunch of flowers here lighting around it. So you get the light right on the baby, the subject itself. So as you can see here on the teddy bear, it's just a white blob. And the problem with that is then there's no depth to the baby's face, and babies' faces are quite flat as they are, especially if it's a newborn, because obviously it has to escape mum's body. And so they have a particularly round and flat featured face. And so we want to add some contrast to that face, again, especially with a bit of light on one side. And you can do this via a window. It doesn't have to be fancy studio lights or anything like that. But the depth is what will make a photo like this work. Cool. So there we go, Rebecca, a bit of feedback. Next, we have the legend that is Chris. And Chris is probably the most prolific. In fact, Chris and Lilani are probably the most prolific contributors to the Facebook group. So I appreciate you, Chris. Now, what do we think of this image? Also, it's bonfire night in the UK, and so if it sounds like we're in the middle of like the World War II blitz in London or Liverpool by the docks and we're getting bombed, that's what's going on. Just loads of fireworks in the background. And yeah, we in the UK celebrate a terrorist trying to blow up the houses, or was it House of Parliament or Houses of Commons? One of the two. Guy Fawkes tried to blow up, and for some reason we celebrate it with our own fireworks. So that is that. So yeah, apologize if you can hear that in the background. So the first thing that strikes me on this is I feel like the image is wonky. So the horizon is off. I feel like there's a slight bit of horizon here in the background. And the problem with the horizon being off in an image like this is that then the perspective is off. So if the bird was sat there like in this way, the bird would be slipping off the back of the rail. So it's only very subtle, but that's the first thing I see, and it's kind of distracting. But other than that, I love the light hitting this side of the rail, and then you've still got the leading line going out, but because it gets darker and then it is more blurred in the background, it isn't really leading my eye out of the image. I kind of get stuck around here, around the bird, which is good. Bit of rim light around the bird. Maybe I'd just brighten it up slightly, or the bird's eye in particular, just so it doesn't fade into a kind of a bit of a blob. There's definitely more room here to stretch the colors, but then that is an artistic choice, because I imagine this is I imagine if you got the color balance absolutely spot on this as to reality, it would be a lot less warm than this. You'd probably be cooling it off. Then other than that, I'd get rid of this spot down here, It doesn't look like a dust spot. It's probably just a stone that's kind of probably looks bigger than what it actually is because of the background blur effect on it. But yeah, it's nice. What's the feedback here? Mark Turner says, I like how the bird and the bit of railing is perched on, and the bit of railing it is perched on are sharp, and you naturally get drawn along the rail as it loses focus. Yeah, I agree. Now, if the bird could have moved to the left. Yeah, you kind of got this post going through the bird, but now we're nitpicking, right? Because then if you move to your right, so the bird would be here, then you'd have a bit more separation between these, but then maybe that post is overlapping. Whenever you've got posts and fixed lines, unless you can unless it's like an architecture shot and you can sit there for 20 minutes with a tripod and really get stuck into it, it's sometimes difficult to not get things laying on top of each other. But yeah, this might have been the best effort in the moment of time that the bird was sat there, which is absolutely fine. Cool. I appreciate you, Chris. I appreciate you posting. Cool. Here we have Paul, Armere Cove in South Devon. So we've got some blurred water. So we're using a filter. We're doing a long exposure. I disagree with Mark here. I think there's too much stuff. I think with this, it's a lovely shot. Don't get me wrong. Lovely conditions. It's nice. I would be pretty happy with this myself. But I personally would have tried to compose this differently. Maybe have stood further over here with these lines of pointing towards this outcrop. And you're kind of in the middle of the two sweet spots. You're not wide enough and close enough to a foreground, so the foreground looks epic, and then it's surrounded by the beautiful skyline that we've got here. But you're also not telephoto enough and far enough away that you compress the image and suck in all that detail to make it look bigger or more lifelike. You've kind of used a wide-angle lens to capture a lot of stuff that kind of points us. Well, it does. That's not true. That's not true. That's not fair. It does point us in the right direction towards the sunset, but there's just a lot of it. So that's what I would be thinking. Also, potentially a polarizing filter to get rid of some of the glare on the water here. That's a little bit distracting. But yeah, I would have tried to find perhaps pool of water, some interesting rock, something, if there's a pop of color, because it looks like there are some shells and different things here. And I would have instinctively got closer to it, big epic foreground, looking out to sea, this kind of rocky peninsula bit in the midground, and then the sunset in the background. Other than that, the colors look way off. This might be a stylistic choice, which is absolutely fine. But you've got a really warm sky, which is fine because it's a sunrise or a sunset, but a really cold foreground. So if you look at the color of the water, even out here where it's blurred, versus the color of the water in these pools, the whole bottom of this, let's throw it to Photoshop and let me just try and demonstrate. The whole bottom of this frame, to my eye, needs to be warmed up just so it matches, if nothing else. I'll just do it as opposed to blabbering on about it, right? I'll give it a go. So we'll do it very quickly. We had a linear gradient here. To me, that looks a lot more real, like immediately. There's a few things, something's still off. It looks a little bit green potentially. Yeah, maybe we're looking more like that. But that to me now looks a lot more realistic. Now, not everyone wants a realistic image. Some people want to stylize their images. But yeah, that's what I'd be looking at. I wonder if there is some kind of crop here, just to kind of demonstrate what I was mentioning. So now you've got these leading lines coming around. Don't want to cut too much off at the bottom there. You've got this bit of dead space there now, which becomes the problem. So yeah, anyway, you get the point. That's the kind of thing I'd be looking for. Just get rid of some of the stuff. It's very difficult to do, or it's more, I find it way more difficult to do a landscape aspect ratio wide shot versus a portrait aspect ratio long shot. Wide shot. If you look at my, no, I don't really have a portfolio online. I should probably have a portfolio online. I should probably create a. Obviously, yours. If you consume any of our content over at Photography Explained on the YouTube channel, you'll see hundreds of my photos over the past couple of years or so. But yeah, I've not actually got that many wide shots with big, interesting kind of vistas. Most of the big foreground shots that I've got are all in a portrait kind of aspect ratio. Yeah, I just wonder if something like that is just slightly more satisfying. Because now my eye knows exactly where it should be going. It's following these rocks here. You've got these lines reinforcing the where my eyes following in the first instance. The sky is completely blown out. There's nothing we can do here with this image, with it being like a JPEG that's been uploaded to Facebook. But what we want to do, if you did have the raw image, is just soften this. So maybe a bit of negative dehaze up here. Because like the sun is obviously hot. The sun, if you got a sunset, you got the sun in your image. It can be. I'll just warm it up as well. Warm it back up. So again, just soften it, adding a little bit of haze there, maybe a bit of haze across that part of the image. And then the other thing I would be considering adding is the what gets added to every one of my images apparently, which is a vignette. So yeah, that's what I would be looking at. So we've got the original shot here, and that's my version of it. Again, really, we want this bit of peninsula to be more here in the middle of the frame, which would mean standing more to the right and turning in, and starting to the right, turning to the left. But yeah, that's how I'd be looking at this kind of image. Cool. All right. We'll take a look at a few more. Here we have Kotek saying hi. James, hello, brother. Hope you're right, mate. Yeah, let's throw up the next image. Cool. I saw this one. I actually really liked this. Here we have Chris, the legend, giving some feedback as well. So this is an image from John Ashmore. The light was not great today, but I did get this hawk. This kind of goes to show that a good photographer can shoot in crappy light and still come up with banging images. This looks like it's quite nicely edited as well. I don't really have all that much feedback. Maybe it's stylized slightly. Maybe the colors could be. I personally would make the colors slightly more realistic. You've got if you throw the raw into Lightroom, it won't do it with the JPEG, but you've got a whole load of fringing around this tree here and around these halos. Lightroom with raw image typically does a pretty good job getting rid of those kind of artifacts. Now you could do it yourself. You could get a brush and just if you did a mask in Lightroom or a selection, brushed over that and just reduce the contrast, you'd kind of get it to fade away a little bit in the background, but it's all over the image. So if there's using the tool to get rid of fringing within Lightroom might be the thing to consider. But I like it. The composition, the branch comes in here. Maybe this is slightly too bright, that part of the branch, but the branch comes in here. I go up the bird. The bird's looking over its shoulder. The bird's thinking, if I was any bigger, I would murder you and eat you. And I'm happy that the bird isn't much bigger. So yeah, let's see what Chris is saying. Fantastic shot. They could be stealing the show. Maybe just a tad darker with the whole background. Maybe. I think John here's done a decent job of the background here. This obviously, even on a dull day, would be brighter. So it's been darkened quite a bit. So we don't want it too unrealistic. Maybe I'd change. I think what I would do, I won't do it with this. I won't throw it to Photoshop to do it. But I think I would maybe mask out the bird and adjust the white balance of the background a little little bit off, a little bit cold, versus the bird doesn't look too cold at all. So that's what I would be doing with this one. Cool. All right. Next image. Here we have Rick Jackaway. It's cool. Look, to me, they just look like dad fighting, which is kind of awesome. Would I change anything about it? I think I might put a vignette, not a graduated filter in this bottom corner, just to darken it off, so that we've got the dark background up here and the dark corner in the opposite side, kind of mirroring each other. Other than that, it depends on the light on the day, and you've got some decent light, but for more epicness, obviously a warmer tone from the sun would be the only thing that you could have shot differently, but then you wouldn't have caught the moment. So yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. It's kind of a bit weird. I don't know. It just seems a little bit prehistoric to me. What does Bruce say? Bruce says the darkened background does remove background distractions, and it's an artistic choice. The edge transition between the birds and the background could be softened as it looks too severe. Softening the bird's feathers. Maybe black and white. I think probably a bit more saturation on the bird's beak here. So you just got these pops of color. That'd be probably the other thing to take a look at. But then again, you're in the realm of, is it realistic? Do we want it to be realistic? Is this an artistic interpretation of the scene in front of you? I don't really care. I just want to take a nice image, but some wildlife photographers want it to look as real as possible. Cool. Let's move over to Jason. Jason, you are quite active in the group as well, so I appreciate you jumping in there. What's Jason saying? Some slight fringing that I can't get rid of, probably because it's just a cheap kit lens. There is a bit of fringing, but that is fine. I think you've done a good job with positioning. So you got the color of the background, which I assume is at the side of a tank or some kind of containment for this beast. And then you've got the color of what would be, I guess, the floor or the foliage on the bottom of the tank or containment unit. You've separated it to get the reptile's head up the top. It's cool. These kind of things, you've got a vignette on there. That vignette could probably be stronger. The problem you've got is you've got light coming down from onto the top of the, I don't know what this is. This is kind of like Komodo dragon or something, because someone else commented what it is. I don't know. My knowledge of reptiles is obviously not very. My language of the reptile species is not very articulate, but the vignette to me looks slightly odd because you've got light coming down on top of the reptile here. I'd probably put a mask around it and just warm it up slightly as well. It just looks a little bit cold. But other than that, it's cool. There's loads of texture. It's really interesting. I'm sure I wouldn't worry about the kit lens. A cheap kit lens for an image like this is literally irrelevant. If you are focused, if you've got the right aperture settings, you've got the depth of field to cover the entirety of the subject, which it looks like you have. This looks pretty sharp down here. It looks pretty sharp on the far side of the reptile's shoulder. The lenses that you're using is irrelevant. Every lens from the past 20 years is absolutely sharp enough to capture an image like this. Fringing, slightly different, but I reckon if you throw this into Lightroom, you'll do a pretty good job of getting rid of that if you haven't tried that already. And the only other thing, these splodges in the background, there's a light splodge there. I might get rid of some of that, just try and smooth it out slightly. And you've got loads of banding, which again, probably isn't the camera. It probably is just the way that you've exported the image. Which is probably content for a YouTube video, because there's a dark, deep rabbit hole as to how to export an image for each of the social media platforms to get the best results for when the platform then recompresses your image and screws around with it. But other than that, pretty cool, Jason. I appreciate you, mate. Cool. Edwin. Something I'm really struggling with from time to time is when I really like a picture but can't really tell why. I'm not even sure if it's just somewhat okay picture or that I'm that I am fond of. Fine. Well, if you like, this is like so soppy and cheesy, right? If you like the image, who cares? That's the response to your spiel here in the as you're posting this image. Very few people, and in the chat, put your hand up, mention it if you are a professional photographer. But very few people out of the like 500,000 people that have watched Photography Explained YouTube channel over the past like month, 60 days or so, very few of them are professionals. And then the people who are professionals are not shooting their own art; they're typically shooting someone else's event or someone else's wedding, or that's basically it, right? There is or someone else's product. So you've got product photography that you can make a living by, wedding photography that you can make a living by, event photography. There's not much else going on. Most of the other people out there that are quote unquote professional photographers are really selling their time, their expertise with workshops, coaching, that kind of thing. They're not professional from the perspective that they're selling their work. So, with all that said, if you like an image, you should absolutely share it, post it around, give other people the opportunity to take joy from it as well. But you certainly shouldn't be even just thinking or posting about the fact that you're concerned that you don't know why you like it or other people might not like it. But yes, as to critique the image itself, the more cliche way of doing this would have been everything lined up. So this tower in the middle of the frame, the moon probably a little bit lower in the shot. Is the tower straight? The tower to me looks slightly wonky. So again, the tower straight, and then wherever this is in the bottom corner, a bit of a field, that is a massive distraction. So we're trying to crop that out. But with an image like this, it depends where it is, right? You can only move so far to the left, to the right before you are blocked off by other buildings or whatever it is, and the moon's constantly moving. And so unless you're going to pull out an app like PhotoPills and do some prediction as to where the moon is going to be or the line that the moon is going to take as it travels across the sky, this might have been all that you could manage. So yeah, I would have tried to crop this out. I would personally go into Photoshop and clone stamp this out, just remove it altogether. So I really like the colors of the trees in the background. You've got nice texture and a bunch of bird poop on this, which makes it interesting, not because it's bird poop, just because it's texture on the top of this building. The golden light hitting the golden element on the top of the building there is kind of cool. And then you've got this really lovely kind of grad up to the blue sky. So yeah, it's a nice image. And you got a bunch of good feedback here as well. I think images do well. We talked about this on last week's stream as well. When there is warm and cold elements in a frame without it looking odd. And this is something that, as I do more kind of like quote unquote cinematic kind of B-roll and footage for Photography Explained, which you'll start to see this week. There's a video coming out with a cinematic intro, or more cinematic than previous videos intro. As I see that it's probably been miles away from me this whole time. A lot of cinematic footage. One of the ways it looks cinematic alongside the spectacular lighting is that there may be a cold face but a warm background, or in a more positive light it might be a warm face and a cool background. And people use the warm and cold to kind of hint and indicate and nudge people's feelings that this person's happy, this person's sad, this environment is cold and sterile, this environment is happy and beautiful and golden. But yeah, that's where we're at. So Edwin, that was a long ramble, mate. I would have aligned these two elements of the frame up. I'd have got rid of this on the side. But otherwise, the colors are really beautiful. Cool. Stu. Working on a long-term project, 5 a.m., capturing both the activity and the emptiness of the hour in that morning. Today I was in the city's bus terminal to catch the bus fleet coming in. Lots of homeless people leave piles of their belongings on the sidewalks. So I think there is a homeless person there because there's a couple of feet. I always feel weird. This is not a there's no politics behind this. And there's certainly no criticism, Stu, here of you documenting this homeless person. I just think it's a bit weird to be taking pictures of people who are, potentially with maybe not, but potentially with the best intentions are just down on their luck. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. It should absolutely. I know that there are loads of countries, and in the UK, it's been kind of brought up, the idea of having more regulation around taking pictures of people in public, and that's absolutely should not be the case. We should be able to take pictures of people, but just as a personal choice, as a personal kind of thought, I get a little bit of the ick. Look at this poor bastard in their Winnie the Pooh, wherever that is, towel or bed sheets, struggling on the streets. But again, it doesn't mean that it can't be, that it can't or shouldn't be documented. It should absolutely be documented. It's just, I guess that's the point of the image. It makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, which is good. The only thing I would comment on is if you're doing a 5 a.m. project, this clock says 5:19. That would have been like a nice Easter egg if it was 5 a.m. and your project's called 5 a.m. Maybe worth photoshopping that in, changing it, maybe go back in another day and getting another image at 5 a.m. Again, if I was reading a photo book called 5 a.m. and there's a bunch of clocks that are bang on 5 a.m. in the photos, I would appreciate that as like a nice touch. But yeah, cool. Appreciate you, Stu. Let's jump to the next image. Here we have Taha. Like it. I wonder if this is. I've not been. I've got a new baby in the house and a golden retriever, and I try and spend most of my time up in the lakes, right, doing photography. But when we do go on holiday, there seems to be a lot of these kind of boats that are not actually sailboats. They've just got an engine underneath them, and people go and get extorted for beer. They go get drunk on these kind of things. So I wonder if it's that, or if this is just actually a sailing boat. Just seems to be a lot of people in the frame down there. Either way, cool color shift here of the blue. The sea being this purpley color, which isn't very realistic, but it works for the sake of the photo. And then the warm sky with the lines of clouds going across. Feedback wise, you kind of got a bit of a balance act here, because ideally we want to be slightly higher as we take the shot, just so these leaves of whatever plant this is isn't touching the boat. That'd be the main constructive criticism that I have. That's kind of distracting and annoying. But I understand why you might have done this, because if you got too high, then the boat becomes even further, potentially come lower down in the frame. This area in the mid to mid foreground gets elongated, and you just got a big black hole. See, ideally, we'd want to shift the boat 100 meters up into the frame. Not very practical, not very realistic. And so you might have done the best of both there to get it in the middle of the frame of the shot. So yeah, the only thing I'd be really, two things. One, I would potentially adjust the colors to make them look slightly more realistic. But again, artistic choice. That might just be the look that you're going for. Is the horizon wonky? I think the horizon might be just very slightly wonky, so we can fix that. Other than that, I like the graininess. You've shot this at high ISO probably, rather than adding grain to the image, but I quite like the graininess at the top. Almost gives it like a filmic look. But yeah, cool photo. Thanks for showing it. Okay, Chris, again. Chris, you've snuck in twice this week. I typically just look for photos that I want to give feedback on and talk about, as opposed to the person taking them. So if you have left a photo in the group, don't take it personally that I haven't gone in there and shows you personally. And yeah, the group, just to remind you, if you're tuning into this live stream and we're kind of 45 minutes into it, we're reviewing photos from the Photography Explained Photo Review Club. You can find it on Facebook. Just Google Photography Review Club and you'll find it. Otherwise, go to facebook.com/groups/photography explained. As we see some inception here with the live stream that we're on. And yeah, we'll come back to Chris's image here. I really like the composition. The blurred background, as I look at this, I go back and forth. it focuses obviously the bird, and the bird is the hero and the center of attention. You frame the bird up nicely in this white bit of pooling water, so the bird stands out. And we're now almost looking from the bird's perspective. I feel like the bird is pondering escaping, going across the Atlantic or heading across the wherever sea or large body of water that's in front of them there. But I also would quite like to see the background. And so I guess you've got a feeling out of me. You've got some emotion. It's almost aided by this. It almost strikes me the bird's looking for freedom as it stood on this spiky branch as well, which even further emphasizes the fact that maybe it feels trapped or repressed or something like that. Obviously, I'm reading a lot into this image, but I quite like it. Yeah, the colors are a bit dull. There's definitely opportunity, especially for the bird, to increase both the contrast but also the saturation if you were so inclined. Yeah, it is a cool image. I appreciate you, Chris. Right, Patrick. So we'll take a look at Patrick. James has a question. So we'll answer your question, James. I'm just starting. I've got a 61 Banjaxed. I am 61 Banjaxed from the building game. I've got a used Nikon D5600. I'm interested in wildlife and macro. And here we go. Wildlife, macro, and landscape. Could I be cheeky? Yes, you can be cheeky, sir. And ask you what lens you would recommend. The problem you've got is they're like the three most disparate potentially styles of photography. So you want a long lens for wildlife, not always, but typically, especially if you want to shoot birds or anything that are fickle and nervous of humans. You want a macro lens for doing macro photography, and for landscapes, you probably want a zoom lens that will allow you to do big vista wide shots, but also zoom in. The thing that comes to mind, I don't have in front of me. They just released a new version of it as well, and so there are going to be the original ones out there. Let me just see if it's. I use this case. Here we go. Pulling back the illusion that I know what I'm doing here. This case here, full of carpet. We've got new carpets in the house. I use this case for shipping all my gear around in the car. So I was throwing it all into my camera bag, and it was just getting wrecked. So no, I don't have it on me. It must be my actual camera bag from the last time I went out. So without kind of building suspense any further, the Tamron 28 to 200 mil. I don't know what it's like as a macro lens. I don't think it has any particular macro capabilities. But that is for wildlife and almost all landscape is probably one to take a look at. I don't think it's out yet. I don't think it's actually available for purchase, but it's certainly being reviewed by all the reviewers at the moment. They've just come up with a G2 version of it, or the Mark II version of it, which is 25 to 200. I'll probably take a look at that. And there's going to be a bunch of people who are taking a look at the new version of the lens. And so, depending on your budgets, the new version, let's say it's £1,000, something like that. But the old version, which has held its price really well, has been around for years at this point. That would be if that is available on Nikon. I have no idea because I shoot with Sony cameras. If that is available on Nikon, then that's something to consider. Either the new version, which will give you slightly more reach on the wide end at 25 mil, or the old version if you want to save probably like £300 or £400, and it's still a cracking lens. Doesn't focus very fast. That's the only issue I've got with it. Fast enough, but you're not going to be kind of shooting a moving bird's eye at half a mile with it. For that, you need more specialist lenses. But that's probably off the top of my head what I'd consider if you can get that on Nikon. I have no idea. But there we go. But yeah, congratulations on being banjaxed. I don't know what that means. Hopefully that was a positive exit from the building game. And yeah, welcome to the world of photography. So with that said, let's jump on to this image here from Patrick. And yeah, this is a nice image. It would be nice if this was in focus at the bottom. Now, to focus stack a raindrop hitting a puddle with multiple other raindrops hitting a puddle might not be very easy. doable for sure. With multiple frames that are blended together, but not very easy. If it's raining and it's this, because you can see the rain hitting coming in front of down here, and you've got some rain on your lens, I think, here as well. So I'd clean that up, but I'd probably wanted to make the sky look a bit darker as well. Let's see if we can throw this into Photoshop, and let me just see if I can demonstrate what I mean. But you've kind of got an image that is... I always feel like you want to lean into one way or another. Let's see if it'll mask the sky. I always feel like you want to lean one way into the other or the other of, is this a calm scene or is this a epic scene? And so if we're going for epic, we probably want to put a bit of an S curve on the background here. And just... I'm going to darken it all. I'm going to remove some of the saturation that's now been added to it. But I'm going to put another mask just to get rid of that really dark patch top of it. And show up the shadows slightly. So again, if you've got the raw image, this will be easier. But that to me now, you can work on, there's a bit of haloing around that. But that to me now is getting on for weather that makes this an interesting shot. You got loads of room with the kind of vibrance if you chose to attack that. We've still got a little bit too much saturation in the background. Reduce some of that. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I'd be looking at with this kind of image. Is the weather epic? Great, lean into it. This is also a good candidate for if we open Luminar Neo for that tool earlier on, because there's lots of contrast here. It's just not being processed at all. And so if we go to this enhanced AI, so this is probably a little bit bright in the middle of the frame here, but hopefully you can see it's not just brightened it, it's added contrast. Is also added contrast to certain parts of the image. It's also added some saturation to it as well without globally adding saturation. So yeah, that's the kind of thing I'd be doing with an image like this. Lean into the darkness of it all, the moodiness of it all, or soften it and have it more pretty and beautiful. But don't be sat in the middle where then it just looks like a picture that you've taken on your phone that anyone could take. The value of having, the only value really of having a camera is more megapixels, more data, so that you can do an edit to either pull things back to how it actually looked. And if the weather conditions were epic, great, that's your starting point. Or to take all that information and to really double down and reinforce some kind of narrative with the image. Cool. James follows up. Thanks for the dice. Banjaxed means worn out. Yep, good for you, mate. 61. Hopefully you are happily retired. I will be the one there. I'll be there one day myself. But yeah, the building game's a hard game, mate. I'm sure you have you've put in the hustle, and so you deserve a little bit of time with your camera doing some photography. It's good for you, man. Okay, we'll go for a couple more, and then I'm going to go and grab some food. So here we have Svetlin. Again, I apologize if I absolutely butchered that. This is almost good conditions and an interesting location that's not been taken advantage of. And what I mean by that is, I look at this, and this is kind of respectful criticism, so you can improve. I look at this, and it's wave in front of rock. What we need is something in the foreground or to be lower so that the patterns in the sand, because there's loads of patterns here with the waves receding, that they become bigger in the frame, so there's more attention being grabbed. You've captured a nice moment in time with the wave, but if you would have captured it perhaps a millisecond before, not literally, but you know what I mean, as a half a second before this wave crashed as it was crowning over. That would be more interesting. And the problem we've got is we've got this big lump of rock, which is probably really cool and interesting. And if the sun was setting behind it, again, image has been leveled up. That's what we want to see. But because there's no sun, there's just a lot of cloud. We've got big rock, wave, and then space. So what we want to do is be more intentional with what's in the frame. And a location like this, you've got loads. There'll be like, I'm sure, branches that have washed up. Anyway, probably the occasional body that's washed up. McGill Island. I don't know where that is, unfortunately. Mexico, South America, somewhere. There's probably you got members of the drug cartel washing up there. Whatever it is, there are definitely things washing up here that are going to be of interest. Or this is similar to the photo that I was talking about earlier on, where it's lots of stuff, but none of it works cohesively together. What we want to do is either take a bunch of steps back and zoom in and pick out a scene, or get really close with a wide lens and create a scene by finding that big, bold foreground that is the main interest of the shot, and all the rest of the epicness that is absolutely there, it kind of accompanies it. Cool. Rick, this is my first post here. Comments and critiques. Welcome. This image of Pismo Beach Pier in California. I don't have too much to criticize. The only thing I'd be looking for is, if I was there, I'd grab the shot. Done. Got the shot. There's probably an opportunity to you've got a light patch here in the bottom corners. I mean, let me just pull this into Photoshop, make sure that I'm not. I'll show you what I mean now. Right. Yeah. Just make sure my monitor wasn't bright at the bottom of the monitor, or the angle, the viewing angle wasn't adjusting this. But even if I zoom out, there's a slight bright patch at the bottom, like a positive vignette. Same at the top here. Cool. So let's throw it into Camera Raw. So I would immediately I'm not adding a vignette, I'm just balancing out the light vignette that was already there. So I'd be looking at that. Again, it depends what look you're going for. You could get all of this much sharper in the bottom part of the frame down here. You can do this manually as well, of course. But I'll just use Luminar Neo here with the structure AI. So we'll have to add more negative vignettes at the bottom here, but you can get all this sharp if you wanted. Do you want to do that? I don't know. Maybe. I think I would. I think I'd want lots of detail down here. So again, we'll choose the vignette in here to add that back in. And then the only other thing I'd be thinking about then, and these are just like, a few basic corrections there. I think that levels up the image just a certain amount. Maybe you could soften the sun here as well, just slightly, with a bit of negative dehaze. But again, we're kind of pushing things here as to what needs to be done. The only other variable you've got are the people at the top. I would be grabbing this frame, and then I'd be stood there waiting. I'd be waiting for them to be celebrating with the arms in the air. That looks like a girl here. Girl to be kissing a guy. This rod to be higher up in the air, potentially, or the guy to be pulling it up and there's a fish on the end of it. Just something from a storytelling perspective. Otherwise, compositionally, you've obviously got the sun perfect, aligned between the legs of the pier down here. And there's not much to say and add other than, these people being a bit more interesting than three dudes fishing and a couple of people coming up behind them, which is relatively interesting. But the difference between this as it is and this being an absolute banger that crushes and everyone's excited about and you get loads of attention on social media is the people in the image doing something of interest. Cool. So with that, we'll take a look at one more. I'm just going to quickly look through. We're going to take a look at this one from Al. Because I saw this and I was like, my immediate gut feeling was, this is weird. So it's obviously a chair. It's probably multiple images stacked on top of each other with slight movement, as opposed to a intentionally moving the frame as it's been taken, because there's kind of quite a lot of ghosting here. Although you can see the frame of the chair, so maybe it was like a quick pull down or shove up as the shutter was open as the frame was taken. I'd get rid of this, whatever that is there, just remove that in Photoshop. I would let's just take a look at this, right? Because again, the feeling I get from this is just weirdness, which is cool, right? When an image makes you feel something, especially when it's not, for me, when it's not like an epic landscape, they make me feel certain ways. But I would be seeing, can we just get rid of some of these bright spots up here just to keep this enclosed feeling, just this like wall of color, rather than the sky just breaking through. As we wait to see if the AI remove will actually remove. I know, but the bar is moving. There must be lots of people using the tool right now as we sit and wait for it. You know what's going to happen next with all these Adobe products. You're going to be sat there waiting for the AI remove tool, and they're going to be giving you adverts on the screen as that bar goes across. And it's going to take longer and longer to remove stuff, and more adverts are going to be put in front of you for Adobe products that you really don't want. Because obviously they've got a world-class suite of products. I use them all the time. The whole team over at Photography Explained use them, the suite of products. But in the same breath, I don't feel like there's really any alternatives. So yes, if we'll ignore this obnoxious watermark in the bottom corner down here. But after that, then you're looking at, I feel like there's more texture there that you could pull out. Just a slight bit of clarity. But then as you pull out more texture, the image becomes clearer as to what it is. So what happens if we remove some texture? It gets a bit sloppy if we remove texture. But yeah. Cool. I quite like that with a bit more vibrance, just to pull the colors in. So yeah, that's what I'd be thinking. There's a few quick edits there. Probably it's going to look odd because of the watermark in the corner. But I might crop it more obviously like that as well. Maybe. No, I think I would. I think that would be my crop. But yeah, really cool image. It kind of inspires me to experiment with this as well, this photography technique. I've actually been, it's good for you, but towards the beginning of the year now, I was on a beach, and as I arrived, I was like, there's beautiful colors, there's patterns, there's lots of tonalities. There was a sunrise, but the water just looked this like turquoise blue. And then I completely forgot to do some, it's like intentional movement, ICM, intentional camera movement images. As soon as I got out of the car, I was like, this is what we're doing, and then never did. Completely forgot about it until just now. But it's a cool technique, very painterly. And yeah, this is the result that we have. So there we go. We'll wrap things up with that. This episode of the Photography Explained live stream Photo Review Club has been brought to you by Photography Explained. If you want to support what we do, we've got a bunch of products over at Photography Explained. If you get any value from my feedback on these live streams, then you'll love this product, for example, where I show you my step-by-step process to composing images.
And we talked about some of this already on this live stream, talking about light and dark, warm and cold, how to add depth to your images. And there's a bunch of bonuses that come along with it as well. So understanding light in the field, me doing composition in the field over in beautiful Wales, and then an ebook here of how to find a composition literally everywhere. It's $97. There's tons of value there. And if you just spent $500, $1,000, whatever it is on your camera gear, $20,000, who knows? Camera gear can be expensive, right? And if you've not done any training on editing, composition, or just general photography skills, whether you are a photographer that has done this in the past and is picking things back up again and you want to brush up your skills, or you're brand new to photography, which I was a couple of years ago. I've only been doing photography, landscape photography for a couple of years at this point. And so if you like my images and you want to create images that are, similar, maybe not world class, but pretty decent, for an amateur level, then check out some of the training. If nothing else, it supports me and helps us put more content together and do more live streams like this. So there we go. We will do one final thing. We'll take a look at the spam. Okay. Tim has posted a bunch in the community. I trust him. This doesn't look like it's AI generated. For some reason, today's spam is this image, but we'll let Tim publish it. And with that, we'll wrap things up, and I'll speak with you next week on next week's live stream. Cheers, everyone. I appreciate you all I appreciate all the comments as well, and the hellos and the chats. It's good to have a bit of back and forth as I do these live streams. So I'm not just talking into the abyss and hoping that people are listening. So yeah, appreciate all the comments, the chats, the live stream comments, and